Good evening and welcome to our third annual Black History Program, brought to you in partnership with NABA San Francisco, NABA Austin, NABA DFW, NABA Houston, and NABA LA. My name is Shawnee Blevins, and I am the proud president of the National Association of Black Accountants San Francisco chapter. Founded in 1969, we are a nonprofit membership association dedicated to bridging the opportunity gaps for Black professionals in the accounting, finance, and other business-related professions. This evening, you were ushered in by none other than the melodic tunes of Miss Nina Simone's Feeling Good. When I hear this song, I am reminded of all of the challenges that we have faced, all of the obstacles that we have overcome, and the progress that we have made to arrive at a new day. A point at which we can take a moment to admire the birds flying high, a moment to feel the warmth of the sun up on our face as it sits high in the sky, and a moment to feel the breeze drifting on by. Those are the gifts and the fruits of a new day. Now, a new day does not mean that we have arrived, nor does it mean that our work is done. It is a celebration of how far we've come and a testament to our resilient nature. While we take a minute, just a minute, to admire the gifts and the fruits that have been born as a result of our tenacious work. The work that was started by Professor Frank Ross, Kenneth Drummond, Errol Biggett, Donald Bristow, Ronald Benjamin, Bertram Gibson, Richard McNamee, Michael Winston, and George Wallace back in December of 1969 in New York City, our founding NABA 9. So this evening's event is an opportunity for us to celebrate our history while proudly and boldly stepping into a new day. At this point, we would like to make a few acknowledgements. Shout out to DFW. We see you in the building. I see Portia, Stavina, Jazz, and Mr. Odell. Thank you for joining us, DFW. NABA Houston, I see Billy and Miss Francis. Again, thank you. Excited to have you all with us. We also have our DOF family, Mr. Michael Steele and Sherry Jackson. Our ACAP family from San Francisco. I see Miss Barbara. We know Teresa's in the house. We also have our Western Region VP, Miss Brittany Bishop. Hey, Brittany. Past NABA National President and past NABA SF President, shout out to Mr. Irby Foster. Past NABA Western Regional President and past NABA SF President, hey, Gina. We would also like to acknowledge our NABA family of partners. We have Renee Jewell from Airbnb, welcome to the family. Kiyoshi Williams from Armanino, hey Kiyoshi. Eric Johnstone and team from Effectus Group, they came deep, you guys. There's about 10 of them here, so thank you. We have Ms. Robin Fry and team from Workday. Again, welcome to the NABA SF family. We have TT and team from Working Solutions. Great to see you all with us. And of course, we have Nicole Felix and Team EY also in the house. We have our Kaiser family, and we also have Mr. Julio Flores from our family at Synopsys. We would also like to acknowledge that we have JC Berger and Lauren Fernandez, part of our Netflix team. And we also want to shout out our friends and family at Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, Moss Adams, Lumentum, and Clorox. And I think I also saw that the one and only Billy Manning is also joining us this evening. Now, last but not least, our NABA students representing San Francisco State. Go Gators! And then we also have a few students from UC Berkeley, UC San Francisco, and UC Santa Barbara. Thank you all for joining us. You are the future. and we are excited to have you with us. Now we'll take a peek at the agenda and roll into a few housekeeping items. All right, so we're going to spend about 15 minutes doing introductions, which will include our moderator and our panelist. Then we'll spend 45 minutes doing the actual panel discussion, which will be great and full of detail. Then we'll roll into a 15-minute Q&A, and then finally we will wrap with closing remarks and next step. Go ahead, let's hit the next slide. All right, so housekeeping. First things first. I believe I saw that Chica OB already put in the chat. If you're looking to chat with everyone, make sure you change your chat functionality so that it says to panelists and attendees. That way, everyone present will be able to see and comment on any messages. Now, if you have questions that you want to submit to have addressed by the panelists, please use the Q&A feature at the very bottom of your screen. If you, by accident, drop a question in the chat, we do have someone that will be monitoring the chat to pull any questions and add them to the Q&A feature. And then the other item is the information regarding the chat, which I just shared. All right, let's roll to the next slide, please. Okay, so it is that time of year where the Western region is gearing up for our annual student conference. And we need some coins, y'all. I'm just gonna keep it real. Last year, we raised $38,000 to honor the amazing scholars coming out of the Western region. And this year, we look to do at least that and some. So if throughout this event, you are touched and you want to contribute and you feel inclined to do so, we've made it so simple. All you have to do is click on this link, which was just dropped into the chat by Western Region Scholarship Fund, and all proceeds that are brought in using this specific link will go directly to the Western Region Student Scholarship Fund. So it's not coming to San Francisco directly. We will then disperse those funds to the Western Region so we can go ahead and start developing that pot of funds for the amazing scholars that we have coming out of the Western Region. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so it's time to get started. At this time, I would like to introduce you to our moderator for the evening, Mr. Jesse Rhodes Jr. Jesse, can you introduce yourself to our NABA family?
Yes, thank you for that beautiful introduction. You made my name sound so cool. I appreciate you. And so pleasure being here this evening. I am your moderator and your host for this, supporting host for this event. My name is Jesse Rose. I've been with NABA since 1994. I'm only 26. You guys do the math. My current position with NABA, I'm the national treasurer. I take that role very, very serious. And I have a beautiful financial committee that supports me and making sure that we are financially, fiscally strong for the next 50 years. I've served in many different roles at the local level, starting back to Drexel University, where I chartered the chapter there at Drexel, and I've served in local in Philadelphia chapter, all the way up to president, and now I have the pleasure of being on the national board for the last few years. And my NABA story of why is you. I really mean that. It's truly embodying living as we climb. I am inspired by the youth. I'm inspired by the professionals in the profession, seeing where we're growing. Living as we climb is something I truly embody and embrace on a daily basis. So that's my NABA story. That's my why.
And I am, as you can see on the panelists, it says Professor Frank Ross, but I'm Frank Ross, just plain old ordinary Frank. But I can't get my students and former students to ever say Frank anymore. They all have to address me as Professor Ross. So, but I'm Frank, okay? And I guess, you know, how long I've been a member of NABA. As you will hear, I'm sure there'll be questions around the formation of NABA. So I guess I've been a member of NABA as long as NABA existed. And even before NABA existed as an organization, when it was just an idea that, we had, and ultimately out of those ideas came what we're now calling NABA. As far as my, positions within NABA, I was the first president, member of the board, but I guess that's pretty much it. I'm one of the founders of NABA, but I've been very active and supportive of NABA ever since it started. Current and most recent professional position, as you can see, this says that I am currently I'm currently a professor. I've had the title of visiting professor at Howard since I retired from KPMG after 38 years in 2003. I retired December 31, 2003. And 2004, that spring semester, I started teaching at Howard on a full-time basis. And then I was convinced by the profession, a lot of us in the profession, that we should reactivate what we now call the Howard University School of Business Center for Accounting Education, which I've been the director of probably since 2004. And I think why NABA, I like this lifting as we climb, because if you go back to the original charter, you would see pretty much lifting as we climb as the purpose of NABA. And to this day, I will still say, the impact, why NABA, it has had a significant impact on I don't know how many lives, personal lives as well as professional lives. And today continues to have that type of an impact. But more importantly, in the future, it's going to have that impact. And I think that to me is what is my NABA why. If I can do anything to help NABA continue having the impact it has had in the past into the future, I definitely want to do my best to ensure that.
Good evening. My name is Gwendolyn Skillern, and I am so honored to be part of this illustrious panel. I'm just so thrilled to be here this evening. I live in Baltimore, Maryland currently, but I am a native Californian and started my NABA and professional career in San Francisco. And so I always consider San Francisco and the Western region my home. Right out of graduate school, my first NABA meeting, I was appointed chapter secretary by Ralph Grant and Don White, two NABA icons. And from there, I served as chapter treasurer, chapter president. I went on to serve as Western Regional Vice President, a member of the National Board, and lastly, National President. I had the honor to serve NABA as a lifetime member throughout my entire career. Presently, I am retired, so I am blessed to be retired, and I live both on the East Coast and the West Coast. I retired as Senior Vice President and General Auditor from Care First Blue Cross Blue Shield. My NABA why, I cannot even begin to quantify the professional development, mentorship opportunities, career goals, job opportunities that I've obtained through networking with NABA members, and also just having lifelong NABA friends. It's like a lifelong family. But also, as Frank mentioned, the honor to lift as we climb. I think we all embrace that as being a NABA member. And I've had the honor to mentor a number of NABA students from across the country, many of whom are on this call now. I won't start calling out names, but some I've known from high school, all the way from college, through their entire professional career, watching them grow and just become outstanding professionals. I call them all my NABA children. So I would encourage everyone to take advantage of your NABA family. The NABA why and the impact on the profession. We'll talk a little bit about diversity later, but I'm just blown away by the advancement that we have in terms of Black partners, executives in major corporations, and just the overall outstanding achievements that NABA has accomplished. So I think NABA has given a lifetime of benefits to me, and I hope I've had the opportunity to give a lifetime back to the organization that we all love. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Zion O'Kay, and I have been a member of NABA since I chartered the UC Berkeley chapter with some fellow classmates back in 1989. So 30 plus years. I've served in various capacities, starting as chapter president and then working on various committees at the professional level. And then eventually when I became partner at Deloitte, I also served on the national board as a member under Gwen's administration as well, under two different administrations. So have definitely enjoyed my activities and participation in NABA over the years. My current role is as a senior vice president of AAA and CNU, so here in Northern California, as the vice president of organizational readiness and real estate. So that'll be an interesting conversation when we talk about how do we leverage some of our accounting and finance background. And my husband and I also co-founded or started our own business. We opened a restaurant called Suya African Caribbean Grill. So shout outs to those of you who have had the opportunity to support us over the years. But we'll talk a little bit about the impact of starting your own business and where that can go as well. So that's a little bit about my current and past positions. And my NABA why, I'm going to leverage a little bit about what Gwen said. I think the relationships and the network that you make in NABA lasts you a lifetime. There are often times when people ask me, do I know an individual? And I'll say, of course I know that person. I've known them for over 30 years. And it's because of the connection that I made with them through NABA. So, you know, just knowing Gwen and Gina Woolley and Ingrid Moore and Irby Foster, everyone who's currently on the call, people you guys have interacted, like Corey Ramsey and I have always had a long time, you know, competition between each other. When I was chapter president at UC Berkeley and he was chapter president at San Francisco State, and all of those connections today are still there, and we pick them up at a drop of a hat. We leverage them, as Gwen said, when we're looking for advice and opportunities to move forward in our professional development. So I really strongly believe NABA's motto of lifting as we climb is definitely part of my NABA why, not only for the people who have helped me, but for the people that I look to mentor and to support in their career development as well. So look forward to having the conversation this evening and sharing more with everyone.
Hi, I'm Teresa Hammond. I'm an accounting professor at San Francisco State. Go Gators. Nice to see all the Gators on the call today. I'm also the author of a book called A White Collar Profession, African American CPAs since 1921, which means this is the 100th anniversary of the first African American CPA. So it's a pretty exciting, big year in a number of ways. I have been a member of NABA since thank you, Shawnee. I have been a member of NABA since 1988. I must not be a very good accountant because I really should have gotten a lifetime membership back in the day. You know, if you take the present value of the annual payments, I think I made a bad choice. But in any case, I joined NABA because when I was in graduate school, I heard about NABA and I went to one meeting and I had never, ever met a group of people who were so committed to making a difference for others. And I have loved being part of NABA ever since. And you know, when I joined NABA, I joined the Milwaukee chapter. That was my first chapter. And we were a bunch of young people. And just like Zion said, I'm still friends with my old friends in the chapter there. And also Frank and I met each other in 1989, I think, when I first joined. And so people like him have really inspired me to try to be part of an organization that can make a difference in the profession. And right now I'm on the ACAP board here in the Bay Area. And I really like working with the high school students and passing on the stories that were shared with me when I interviewed some of the first Black CPAs. I like passing on what they shared with me to a new generation. So I'm really pleased to be on this panel. I'm glad you're all here tonight.
Thank you.
Awesome. So go ahead. Apologies. Go ahead.
That's all right. Thank you all. You are now in the hands of our trusted Jesse Rhodes.
Hey, I was excited. I mean, one, I'm honored. I was picking on my age, but by the years you all have, I'm the baby in this group, so I'm loving the moment. I appreciate it, and I will embrace it throughout the call. Also, I'm wearing my San Francisco pin 49ers. I'm a diehard 49ers fan. I'm from Philadelphia, so I'm a fan of the Eagles, but I'm a diehard Niners fan. So for all you Oakland Raiders fans, now it's considered Las Vegas. I'll move on. So one thing I said earlier was, I forgot to say earlier, was my profession. So I'm actually now in diversity, equity, inclusion within Amazon. That's a recent role for me. I've been here now, I guess 9 months. My day one was actually in May. Unfortunately, Memorial Day weekend, May 25th, George Floyd's murder was my first day in this role. And so I think about the decision to make the transition. I think about where we at today is near and close and personal for me, as far as ability to make an impact in my role, and each of you guys impact in what we're doing. So my first question I really want to get out there from all of y'all is, since you first began your career, right? How much change have you witnessed in the diversity of accounting and auditing profession? Maybe Zion will go first.
Sure, Jesse, I'll go first. I think I've witnessed a lot. I think back to my starting class and, how many African Americans or other people of color were in that starting group. And I started in the San Francisco office, and over the three groups that started, there was over 50 of us. And I would say a handful of people of color and a smaller number of African Americans. And I think over time, when I look then and traverse to today, there's definitely an increase, right? And we see it not only in the professional accounting firms, but in the field of accounting and finance in general. There's a larger increase. And when I think about some of the changes, I mean, I think about some of the simple changes. California recently passed the Crown Act, right?
Mhm.
And I was sharing with my family why I found that act so important. And I remember simple things like back in the day when I was in public accounting and thinking about wearing my hair in braids. And I had realized, and I grew up wearing my hair in braids, right? I grew up with wearing my hair with beads at the end and simple things like that, and feeling inclusive and comfortable enough at work to be able to make that sort of simple choice, right? And that was, 30 years ago compared
Mhm.
to having to still go forward with the Crown Act and embrace diversity today. So you see a lot of change, right? But I also recognize that there's still a lot to still change. And you really want to encourage African Americans and other people of color to join the public accounting firms and the accounting and finance profession in general, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who need to look for opportunities to mentor and encourage others. And if we're not in that profession to do so, it's difficult for other people who are looking to break those barriers, right?
Mhm.
So I think a lot has changed, but there's evidence today, of course, that there's still more change to come.
Very, very well said. And I shared my story earlier because I think we embracing the visibility. It's always been there regarding to the troubles. In the past, we went to work and had to wear that mask and still try to smile and do our day job, do our debits and credits, and try and stay face while dealing with the pain. Today, we are able to voice that pain, share our story, and help you understand the reality it means to walk in this path. So it really changes the ripple effect. Gwen, I'd love to hear from you and your perspective on how you've seen the profession change over time in the space of diversity.
I'm going to really date myself. When I started at then Haskins and Sells in the San Francisco office, there were probably 250, 300 professionals, three Black professionals, one of which was a receptionist who became my best friend, and very few women as well in the profession. And it was quite sobering because you sort of felt like you were an island all on your own, and wasn't quite sure, even though I went to all majority schools through college, high school, you still in a professional context weren't quite sure how to maneuver through the environment. And so when I look at today and the diversity and representation of today, it's just amazing to me. I remember in San Francisco, Robert Grayson, I don't know if many remember him, he was one of the first Black partners. And we were all thrilled when he became a partner. And it was really difficult then in terms of very few people were promoted up to partnership. It was sort of the African Americans would make it to a certain level and then they would move out for a number of reasons. I moved out just because I found myself the mother of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, a single mom. And back in those days, there were no concessions for women. You had to travel, you had to carry the same load as everyone, regardless of your circumstances. When my daughter was born, and I see she's on the webinar now, she was 6 weeks early and I was up for manager. And in order to be promoted to manager, I had to go to new manager school in Illinois. So I left my 6-week-old baby with her dad for a week and went off to new manager school. So I just love to see the advancement that I'm seeing now, both in terms of Black partners, Black executives, even women, and the advancement that we can make. And we bring a different voice. And I think even though diversity is the in topic now and all the corporations are talking about what they're doing to address diversity in light of Black Lives Matter, I think the proof is still in the pudding. And I think it's important for us to be at the table, to bring our perspectives. I was asked to join a race discussion group, 6 women, 6 Black women and 6 white women. And at first I said, what do I have to discuss? I know all about race. But I found out that from that group, the dialogue is what's important.
Yes.
And people say they embrace diversity, they understand diversity, but they may or may not. And we can tell that by the election and how many people voted for you know who. And so it's still important that we're at the table, our voices are heard, and we bring that diverse perspective.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Teresa, for one, thank you, Teresa and Frank, for letting me be able to call you by your first name. Frank set the stage, Teresa supported. So we created a safe environment to have a very family conversation. So folks listening and watching, hey, why is he calling Teresa and Frank? They gave me permission. So thank you. So Teresa, love to hear your perspective and insights regarding to how you've seen diversity change in the profession.
Well, because my book is on the first Black CPAs, I'm going to take it a little farther back than when I first started in the profession. But there were not 100 African American CPAs in the United States until 1965. So at that point, it was just 1 in 1,000 CPAs were African American. So, and then we had the civil rights movement, which had been going on for quite a while, but it accelerated at that point. And there were some improvements in the 1970s. And I see some data in the chat room, and I find it just super interesting because what happened in the 60s and the 70s, things started to change. And then when I entered the profession in the early 1980s, because I worked for Deloitte in 1983, that's when I joined Deloitte. By then, the whole push to increase the diversity of the profession had completely fizzled out. So in the 1980s, during the Reagan era, there was no interest in this topic whatsoever. There were people who said, hey, we had, 10 years of affirmative action. And so it's time to just, treat this as if there's a level playing field and we're going to ignore what happens. So the AICPA data started to drop in terms of the percentage of people being hired. You could see it in the data. And many of you know Bert Mitchell. He has large CPA firm. He's retired now. But I remember talking to him about the fact that in the late 80s, the AICPA stopped collecting data. And he's like, yeah, why? The numbers aren't looking good anymore. And since the numbers don't look good, we're not going to collect that data. So this is when I met, Frank, and when we were, talking about doing research on the history of Black CPAs. And I have to tell you, it was not popular at the time. So the one thing I'll say about it, so I agree with everybody that we have so much work left to do, but I am feeling optimistic in this moment that at least we do have the attention of the corporate executives. And one thing that did happen over all those years is that even though the numbers are still low, there are many African Americans in executive positions, as Gwen stated. And so now that the wider community is saying that this is important, there are people in position to make a difference, whereas they weren't in position to make a difference back in the 70s because, Frank was just starting his career then, right? So those things have changed and have made me more optimistic that things will continue maybe we'll get another little foot on the gas pedal and we'll see another acceleration and improvement now. But I really hope we all embrace this moment to bring that about.
I totally agree, and I do say taking full advantage of the ripple regarding to we're all at home, COVID. We activate our crisis management plan. Like I said to this group here, y'all risk people, right? And in corporate America respond, and then we felt hurt, and so we respond, and that's a big ripple. Now the question is, what we do with it and the actions we take. So I appreciate you sharing that. Frank, I intentionally want to come to you and get a chance to hear from the rest of the panelists. Love to hear your lens, your insights. I know it's one of the main core reasons why you were inspired to start NABA. Tell me first, looking back to looking today, how much have you seen it change from a diversity standpoint?
Well, you have to go back to 1966 is when I graduated with my bachelor's degree and joined then Pete Marwick Mitchell. And at that time, the professions, the major firms, they had just opened their doors.
Yeah.
Probably 64, 65. If I'd graduated 2 or 3 years earlier, I probably would not have gotten a chance to go with any of the major accounting firms. Actually, my chairman of the accounting department at Long Island University, back then there were only 2 of us, one young lady and myself in the accounting department of 70 graduates. And he did not know that I had already gotten offers from about 4 of the big 8 firms and the 4 that I interviewed with. So he was concerned that here's one of his top students and he might not get a job, so he may not be able to get his CPA certificate when he passed the exam. So he passed the word to the students and told one of them, make sure you go and tell Frank that if he doesn't get an offer from these interviews he's going through, come talk to me and I'll try to get one of my friends to give him a job so he can get his experience. I mean, that's what we were up against back then. Of course, once I told him that I, had these offers, he was very happy. But at that time, the firms were really only hiring one of us at a time. And we didn't know that until several years later when we started to meet each other and people will come up to me and say, Frank, you took my job. And I said, what are you talking about? They would say, well, I lived in Louisiana and I was told that the New York office of Pete Marwick was going to give me a job, but they couldn't do it yet. Couldn't give me the offer because there was an offer outstanding to someone. And then when I met another person who joined PwC, Price Waterhouse at the time, he gave me this, he said, he and I started talking about when I sent them my rejection letter. And he said, then that means if you had said yes, I would not have been hired by Price Waterhouse. I mean, that is a fact of what was going on back then. So when you ask me, do I see a change? Yes, I see a significant change. But over the years, and this is quite a long time I've been involved with the profession, I've seen what is going on today in the profession 3 or 4 different times. The emphasis on making this profession more colorblind, if you want to use that word. And each case, it ended after it started. And my hope right now is we've made a lot of progress. I mean, when I graduated from college, I couldn't ever envision myself as a partner. I couldn't ever envision myself to be on the management committee, to be of a firm, to be on the board, to be running an office, an area, and all of that. I couldn't. But a young person now coming out of school, joining one of these firms, they have role models now that have been partners. They have role models that are in leadership positions, vice chairman. I understand that, I think at EY, their deputy chairman happens to be an African American. Price Waterhouse several years ago with the merger, during the merger with Cooper's, their lead partner, Woody Britton, was the first African American to be a deputy chairman or vice chairman, whatever their firm call it. So we have made a lot of progress, but my fear is that if we're not careful, we could lose the emphasis and not really make this time a significant difference in this profession. And that's where an organization like NABA really needs to step up
Mm-hmm.
and make a name for itself.
Yeah, I take that. I felt that. I don't know if you guys understand the power of hearing Frank say that to me, right? And to us and you all listening. We literally have to lean in and do, I tell people all the time, it's like doing workout, push-ups. And you know that push on number 15 start to hurt. Well, we got to lean past 15, do 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You continue to make that change. So Frank, you inspire so many people, myself, everyone in this panel, everyone you engage with. You continue to lean in daily to this day. And I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate how much you inspire all of us. And I want to ask you a question: what inspires you, and even what inspired you to start NABA itself?
You know, I get asked that question so many different times and in so many different ways. And I wish I could answer it honestly, because when we started NABA, we weren't thinking of NABA as it is today.
Yeah.
We saw a problem and we said, you know, the firms weren't doing anything, so let's go do it ourselves. And I think that's really is what started NABA. And if you think back to 1968, December of 68, I guess, would be when, you know, NABA, about 20 or so of us met in my living room. And I'd been married a year. My daughter was just born. She was probably a month old. And you could, you know, we were young, my wife and I, and I'm coming home telling her, you know, I'm going to have 20 people, about 20 people come into our house on Sunday. Can you fix lunch for us? You know, you could imagine what she said to me. Then she said, well, where's 20 people going to sit? I said, well, you know, we really had no furniture. It was a small apartment. We just had a couch and 2 chairs, you know, because we just got married a year or 2 ago, that sort of thing. Well, I said, well, look at the floor. We have a beautiful carpet. We'll, you know, we'll pull up the carpet and sit on the carpet. And that's really what we did, and sit there. But the thing was, out of that number, about 9, the 9 of us that's given credit really stayed and held a series of meetings and eventually led to the incorporation of NABA. But I would say you have to go back in history. And at that same period of time, the major firms that had offices in New York, there were 6 of the 8 firms. They were sued by the New York City Human Rights Commission, you know, for civil rights action. And Why aren't you hiring more blacks and that sort of thing? So they immediately, in anticipation of settling that, they immediately went out and started hiring. And now other cities were doing the same thing. It's just not in New York. But if you can think of bringing in individuals into New York City, or even into a city like San Francisco, cities like Houston, cities like Chicago, or those big cities. And these are individuals that grew up in a small town. They went to a black college in a small town. They've never been to New York City. And here you are bringing them into New York City, and you're going to, tell them you're going to compete with NYU graduates who grew up in New York City and have lived in the city and have played around, if you know what I mean. That's been their stomping grounds. And all of a sudden, these individuals come from these small towns, needed some adjustment. And the firms were saying, yeah, we understand, but if we did that, we're admitting that we're bringing in the wrong individuals. We want to bring in people that's ready to compete with whoever we have already. So you're not going to do anything? Well, we'll do it ourselves. But then you have to keep in mind that at that time, the civil rights movement was moving from Martin Luther King's, peaceful demonstrations to the Black Power movement. And you can imagine the pushback we got when we said we're forming this organization called National Association of Black Accountants. I guess everybody said, Frank, that's why you have to be the leader, because people will trust you. People would they know you're not out to upset, quote, the apple cart type of a thing.
Yeah.
But my challenge the first couple of years was really gaining acceptance and having them recognize that we were a positive organization. We were going to be positive, get the AICPA backing us, get the New York State Society, getting major CPAs. So I could go on, but I think you get the idea. The inspiration is we had to do something because nobody else was doing. We saw a problem, no one was addressing the problem. And the only way these individuals were ever going to be successful is if we help them in the transition.
Thank you, Frank. That's a good segue. 'Cause I love Teresa hinted earlier about going to the book she wrote, and hearing you sharing too, Frank. Teresa, I love you can speak to some of the historical challenges that defer African Americans from pursuing CPA licenses, and are those challenges still present today? And how do we combat these challenges from a corporate perspective, from a NABA perspective? Love to get your thoughts, Teresa.
Well, the one thing that I think is kind of ironic is that when, I've been a professor for 30 years now, and my students, they're all stressed about the CPA exam. That was not the issue with the first 100 Black CPAs. The first 100 Black CPAs had graduate degrees, often undergraduate degrees from top institutions, or graduated at the top of their classes. So education wasn't a problem. Taking the CPA exam, usually they passed the exam, but the big barrier was the experience requirement. As Frank said, most white firms would not hire African Americans, period. The fact that Frank's professor said that he could come work for him if he couldn't get a job with one of the firms is something that happened once in a while with a few people. So there were a few professors, like Richard Austin is the first Black CPA in Michigan, and his professor helped him get the experience requirement so that he could, become a CPA and open his own firm. But that was an absolute barrier to joining the profession. So what I love about the book, and I feel so honored to have talked to the people I interviewed for my book, is so many of the very first people who broke through created kind of a family tree, and then they would train others. So before Frank was able to go work for Pete Marwick and Mitchell, I guess was the name at the time. But before Frank was able to get that job, African Americans would move to Chicago, to Atlanta, to Michigan, because there were Black CPAs in each of those towns. And Mary Washington Wiley, who was the first Black female CPA, she got her CPA in 1943. She is the main reason that of the first 100 Black CPAs, 27 were in Illinois. And it's because she had an open door. She knew how hard it was to get the experience requirement. So if she was a very demanding boss, a lot of the guys who worked for her told me, you know, what high standards she had. But if you had an accounting degree and you had passed the CPA exam, she was like, come on and work here and I will help you get the experience and we will figure it out. We will figure out how to get enough work to do to provide you with the experience. So obviously that's not the same situation that we face today. And at the Center for Accounting Education at Howard University, I know that there's been a big emphasis on retention, not just recruitment, but also retention within the firms. And I share everyone's skepticism about the 3 or 4 or 5 times that there's been a, you know, acceleration in efforts. And I think that we have to, you know, keep this momentum up partly ourselves. But I do think that but just again, in talking to my students, and I'm been faculty advisor to the NABA student groups at the various schools that I've worked for, this idea that you could bring your whole self to work is still not true. It's still not something my students feel when they enter one of the professional organizations. They still feel like they have the burden of representing every Black person on the planet every time they don't want to, you know, no white kid from NYU, to use Frank's example from earlier, no white kid from NYU is afraid of asking a question because they're not going to disparage NYU. They're not going to disparage all the white people that work for the firm. But that's still a burden that my students face. And until we change the profession to really, you know, raise the awareness of the majority of the population to understand what their new employees are going through and to really care, to make a difference and to make it a truly inclusive environment with real opportunity, and also to appreciate the talents that African-American students bring. A lot of times their experiences are different and that difference is a good difference.
Yes.
And so instead of trying to, you know, especially in the 90s, man, the firms just wanted to hire a Black person who was just like all the white people, but happened to be Black. And so there's just progress in that area that also needs to be made. And I don't think I'd be doing this and be part of ACAP and be so excited about NABA and join all these committees if I weren't perpetually optimistic. But I'm also skeptical at the same time. But I'm you know, ready to go for it again.
So Teresa, I'm glad you shared something I have to say. Gwen, I'm coming to your question. You probably thinking something similar because I know just me knowing you. I love saying I'm unapologetically Black. The beauty by embracing my fullness. And I share that very openly at work about I bring me to work. This is who you hire. And that shift and that freeing by saying that in this kind of forum has been such healing for myself as an individual and those who receive it. That to me is probably the most transitional thing I've experienced in my 20+ year career. Where I could come and be authentically me, unapologetically, and realize my uniqueness is my gift, is the asset that we bring. So I appreciate you sharing that. The more we can lean into that as individuals and embrace that power that we bring, whew, powerful. Gwen, question for you is, hearing Teresa sharing, when is the right time to really to increase our population, increase representation of diversity at in the accounting profession? When is the best time age-wise to really impact? Is it middle school? Is it high school? Is it all the above? Love your perspective on that, especially after you hear Teresa sharing about universities' curiosity from your mindset, what you've seen work and where we should start doing more of.
Actually, Jesse, if I could back up a minute,
Oh,
because I'd like
sure.
to
I
address
felt
the
you. Yeah,
question. I'd
sure.
like to address the question about getting more Black CPAs. As Teresa mentioned, certainly in the beginning, it was passing the exam. I know I had to just set my life aside while I studied for the exam. And today, it's still a challenge in passing the exam.
Yeah.
And the students, there are a number of review courses. But what I found during my national presidency, I started an initiative called CPA Bound. And our goal was to increase the number of Black CPAs. And what I found is there are greater challenges in addition to passing the exam. Students today have so many opportunities.
Hmm.
When I came up, when you're talking about knowing what an accountant was, I didn't even know what an accountant was until I was in college, knowing the benefits of a CPA. But today, the students have so many options, and you can see that at the firms. It's not only CPA at the firms, it's technology, it's advisory, it's consultation. There's just so many opportunities. And so I think one of our challenges is selling why it's important to become a
Yes.
CPA. Certainly, when I get a stack of resumes, when I was chief audit executive and I start flipping through them, one of the first things I do, right or wrong, is look for initials after someone's name. Because those initials really demonstrate a dedication to your profession, a dedication to excellence. And also, I think we have to sell that being a CPA is not only wearing green eye shades and counting numbers. If you look at the partners that are CPAs, in addition to their executive positions, which Frank so well outlined, they have many talents. They can do IT work and they can translate what it means. Everything in a business has a financial implication. No matter what happens in an organization, it gets you back to the bottom line. I learned that when I was in a controller position with a large hotel a hotel company in Atlanta. Every act gets to the bottom line. And the value of being a CPA is being to help the business guide through those financial challenges.
Yes.
Understand that every act you do, how it's going to impact your balance sheet, how it's going to impact your business, and how you can use it to grow your business. So I think we really, as an organization, need to do a better job of selling why it's important to a CPA, especially if they're going to have to pass an exam to get this versus I can go to Booz Allen or I can go to one of the big banks and I can get a financial job or I can be an investment manager. Why is it important to be a CPA? And I think that's really a challenge that we have to continue to strive and communicate the importance of being a CPA.
I love that. And what do you see at what's the good time to insert that into the mindset? At what age? I have my thoughts, but curiosity what yours are. When's a good time to influence it?
Well, I think certainly our ACAP program is
Hmm.
outstanding. And certainly, I think middle school starting to
Yes.
introduce the concept. But I think it's more than just introducing the concept. It's the way our ACAP program, we take the students into the firms so that they can see what actually happens in an accounting firm. And on a personal level, give them experience. I'm going to call out Jonice Preston. I don't know if she's on the call. She's from Dallas. When Jonice was in high school, I hired Jonice. I paid her out my pocket. I was treasurer for the Coalition of 100 Black Women, and I brought Jonice in, and she did all the bookkeeping for our chapter. And Jonice went on to graduate. She went on to get her CPA, and now she's an executive with a vice president and executive with a company in Dallas. And so not only just introducing them to the concept, but giving them some hands-on experience, which our ACAP program does greatly. And any chance you have on an individual balance, bring on a student. Zion in her business, hire an accounting student, get them
Yeah.
involved and get them to understand and appreciate what it means to be a CPA.
Love it. Uh, I'm seeing the questions coming in. I want to get a question to Zion for because when you good lead up regarding to starting your own business, Zion, I'm so impressed with your background, what you've been able to accomplish, in your career, starting your own thing. I love supporting Black businesses. So be unapologetic and share your link in the comment chat too as well, so we make sure we can buy and make orders from you. One question I have for you is. One is, what was your main reason for leaving public accounting? So Gwen talked about starting your career, becoming a CPA. You've done that, right? Very successfully, partner the firm. Uh, when do you think was the right time to do it,
To do what?
or to to the right time to leave public accounting, to right time to make the shift? Is there a right time? What was the right time for you, perhaps?
Well, I would say everyone has their own right time. I don't think there's any one right time. I think it really depends on where you are in your career, how you're enjoying the work you're doing. And I think that plays a lot into it. If you're getting a lot out of your current role and the firm that you're working for, I think you should continue to push through and get through those levels. But for myself, I think I had to stop and I had to really think about the advice that I had given others when they had come to me about was it the right time
Mm-hmm.
to apply that to myself. And for me, I left in, it feels like forever ago, 2013. And when I had made partner, I made partner in 2003 or so. Around that time, I had just had my daughter, so that's kind of my milestone for that. And it was new for me. It was also around the time when Sarbanes-Oxley was just getting started, right? So there was more work, and we had just reduced to about 4 firms because of Enron, right? So we'd gone from Big Five, I think, down to Big Four at that time. So there was a need to absorb a lot of clients amongst the Big Four. And there was also a big push to, of course, have the right resources available to be able to take in that absorption. And then the firms were now turning into an entity that was being regulated, right? And we weren't used to being regulated by the PCAOB. And so there was a culture shift. And I think each firm went through it differently. And I would say at Deloitte at the time, Deloitte went through it significantly. Each firm kind of has its own nomenclature, and Deloitte
Yeah.
would be referred to as the auditor's auditor. So there was a lot of pushback from the firm in terms of being regulated and how can you tell us how to manage things. And that translated over time as we began to realize, no, we are regulated and we do have to respond to findings and things being in the public eye more than they had been in the past. And that caused a shift, I think, in our culture that impacted me in a way that I wouldn't have thought it would have impacted.
Mm.
Um, and I really had to take a step back and say, do I enjoy what I'm doing? For me, you spend all these years trying to get to that role, and then you realize, wait, this is the role that I'm going to be in for the longest time, right? I'm a first year for 1 year. I'm a senior maybe for 3 years. I'm a manager maybe for 5. Do I want to sit and be a partner for another 20 some odd years? And so there were a lot of things going on in my life. I just got remarried. My husband and I have been talking about starting another business. There were all these, internal changes, like I said, that were happening around being a regulated entity. And I had to stop and say, am I enjoying what I'm doing still?
Mm.
And just like I would have said to anybody else, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then it's time to make a change. And I had to take my own medicine, right?
Yeah.
I had to stop and really apply that to myself. And so my husband and I had already started our restaurant, and we knew at that time that there was opportunities. Both of us are finance people. My husband's a finance guy. People always like to say, which one of you is the chef? And I say, neither one of us. We were really taking our business skills and applying them to our entrepreneurial idea. And so when we started off the restaurant, we had been told, hey, don't be surprised if you're in the red for 3 to 5 years. And we had socked away a lot of money to be able to cover our expenses just in case we didn't make any money. Well, in year 1, we were in the black, and we stayed in the black all the way through. And unfortunately, we had to close this year in 2020 due to COVID. But every year we were in the black, and we applied our business knowledge in our restaurant in order to make it scalable. We grew to 3. Our plan was to continue to grow to 5 and expand. But COVID hits, and then so how do you shift and how do you
Yeah.
pivot? And we applied those business knowledges, right? I mentioned earlier on the real estate. I'm in charge of real estate, and I've learned a lot being in charge of real estate. What's the first thing we did? We ran to our landlords and we renegotiated our contract. So we took all of that information and applied it to our business as we were growing, and we applied it to our business as we determined how we were going to wind down. And so to Gwen's point, I think starting a career in public accounting, whether you learn about it in high school or you learn about it in middle school, I really didn't focus on public accounting as a career until I was a graduating senior. And I wasn't excited by the job offers that I got. And I quickly pivoted to go look at those big 8 accounting firms that everybody else was singing and dancing about. And that's when I decided. So I don't know that it's ever too late. I do agree, though, that the exposure is what helps people make that determination. And I always tout, even if you don't want to stay in public accounting for a long time, I think the experience that you get going into a public accounting firm and the training that you get in those first 3 years and longer, of course, are what you end up leveraging later on in life. And even if it's not public accounting, even if you're working in an accounting role, I think there's a lot that you learn that you end up leveraging in any role you take on later. Because I can tell you the number of executives that I interact with today who really don't understand financials, who really have
Mm-mm.
a tough time managing their P&L, who really have a tough time looking at analysis or even understanding models and things of that nature. So where however you get into a career in accounting, accounting specifically, because you learn the financial statements, right? You learn how to read the financial statements, you learn how to understand the impacts of some of your choices, whether it's a balance sheet or a P&L. I mean, I'm still trying to explain to people the difference between an accrual and a direct hit to the P&L. All of that comes to you much quicker when you move into other roles and puts you at a higher level playing field than a lot of your peers. So I kind of wound that question or
No, I
answer.
love it. And you actually kind of answered the other part of my question too. Looking back, what you know now, was it the right decision at that time to make that pivot? I think you kind of answered that question, but I still ask anyway, right? You feel like I guess your head nod. Yep.
Yeah, no, it definitely was for me.
Hmm.
There's life after public accounting for all of you who are still in public accounting and you're struggling with that. But I do think careers in public accounting are great. And if you're on a trajectory that continues to serve you positively, I'd strongly encourage you to follow that. But
Totally agree.
if you made a decision to leave, there's definitely life after public accounting, and you will find that your experience will serve you greatly in whatever role you take on, and that's whether you stay in a finance silo and when you go in house, as we like to refer to it, or you choose to do something on the operational side. Again, that experience is going to set you apart.
Appreciate
Jesse,
that. Good,
Jesse,
good.
could
Sure,
I
Gwen.
add?
Sure, please. Yep.
In terms of what Zion said also, when I moved from public accounting into industry, everyone said, how can you leave public accounting? Well, when I moved into heading an internal audit function with Kaiser, I treated my internal business partners as my clients. So I used the exact same skills that I used in public accounting in servicing my internal business clients. And yet I didn't have to pay the payroll and I didn't have to do the administrative work. And so it really is a perspective how you approach it. In whether you're in corporate or whether you're in public accounting, as Zion said, those skills are just invaluable and they're transferable just about everywhere.
Love it. Love it. I'm seeing some beautiful questions show up. If you guys okay, I'm gonna try and shoot through as many as we can. I'll share it. You guys let me know, react based on what you hear. First one is I love is, what are your thoughts on imposter syndrome as relates to not just Black women, but all Black people in the workplace? I'll just say pretty much any humans in the workplace. What's your thoughts on imposter syndrome? And I'll take it a step further. How do you manage through it? We all have it, by the way. But any reaction, thoughts? Thank you for asking that question.
Maybe I'll start off, and I'm going to make an assumption around what imposter syndrome means. So Jesse, please correct me if
Hmm.
I've got a wrong analogy. But I usually take that term to mean coming into a situation and not necessarily, well, I'm going to take it as coming into a situation and not necessarily being prepared. And I'll pause there, Jesse, and ask, is that the right interpretation of it, or correct me if I'm.
I'll say a little bit beyond. It's like you're in a room, you feel like either I shouldn't belong here.
Yeah.
Your internal thoughts to take over. Like I'm the one only in the room, or hey, I'm not. Maybe not. I may not feel prepared. Either I did get prepared, but I'm fighting with my own energy to say, am I really representing what I should be representing in this particular space?
So I go back to what you said originally, which is being unapologetic in whatever space you're in
Yes.
and being authentic. So I'll take it from my viewpoint, which is I always want to be authentic. When I was trying to decide which firm I wanted to start in, I went with which one would allow me to be the person who I am. And I grew into that role over time, like I said, right? I got more comfortable with who I was. I built the equity to move forward and not worry about choices I was making impacting me in my role. but you still sometimes have that inkling in the back of your head, you know, am I accepted? You know, am I welcomed? Um, are there people here who are willing to support me? And I think you've got to push past that and really step outside of your comfort zone to have some difficult conversations with people and finding the right people to have those difficult conversations with, because it's not always safe to have those conversations with everybody. And so you learn to pick up on the emotional intelligence in the room as you enter. You try to determine the reception that you're receiving and how do you pivot that if you think it's not coming at you the right way. But it's hard because I think when you're younger in your career, you don't necessarily have that same level of confidence that you have when you've been in your career for 10, 15, 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And so for those of us who are older, I think, you know, we're like, bring it on. We know what we're doing, and that's not as necessarily the same sort of issue as when I think about the younger me and walking into a room and thinking about, hey, do I belong here? Am I accepted? Can I push through? And then you know what I realized? I realized half these people in here are doing the same thing that I'm
Yes.
doing. I know nothing, that's just what I know. And that's what got me through it a lot is nobody here knows necessarily more than what I know, and nobody here is necessarily better than I am. So it's just, but you know, some of us grow up with thick skin, and I have a thick skin, and I would push through that. But I think it's just something that each of us have to look at and determine what works best for us. I'm
I
sure
love
others
it.
have thoughts around that as well.
I love that. And I put a quote out there that I referenced a lot. And I said, for those to truly embrace this, is the world out there is desperate to make the impact that only you can make. I want you guys to really take that in, because when you embrace that here, that helps you fight through those moments of the self-doubt and say, hey, only I have this unique perspective. No one else, not even my twin, or sibling can repeat my lived experience and insight that only I can bring to the table. That humbles you to reground you. So I share it with you. I see another one out here for, it actually put Professor Ross, must be one of your students, Frank. Professor Ross, your comments about seeing the cycle of interest in the Black accounting professionals and then failing steeply all 4 times. I love to hear the panelist view on how we keep our companies accountable for the long term so that we can continue to make improvement in the right direction. It's no longer a hot topic to the larger population. Any reaction from the panel? Obviously, Frank, you as well.
I'm trying not to say anything till I come from the panel. Then I can react. But, you know, since no one else is saying something, if I understand the question, it is really dealing with, maybe I should ask you to just repeat it a little bit.
Sure. I'll summarize it too. Essentially, what I hear is, as you mentioned 4 times, you personally witnessed this here. How essentially how are you making sure it's not just a moment, but it's truly a movement, right? And so, and do you see, how do we make sure that it's no longer just a hot topic, time of the moment, and things fizzle back down, which is a movement, moment, and to actually to be more of a movement. Is that fair?
Over the years, I've seen it, that it started out that things, you know, changes start out as if it's going to have make a significant difference. And then 5 years later, a couple of years later, nobody's talking about it. You bring it up, they listen to you, and then they move on and go do whatever they were doing. Okay. But I think the thing that I have tried to do is be consistent. I think everyone recognized, and it really became obvious when I retired from KPMG and started teaching at Howard. A lot of individuals from the firms, the big four firms especially, came to me and said, you know, Frank, we need to do something.
Mm.
And you're the only one, and I'm not going to pat, people that know me know I don't pat myself on the back, but they say, you're the one that can make the difference.
Mm.
And I had planned on just retiring and teaching and doing nothing else, and maybe taking some long vacations and stuff like that and enjoying my retirement, but still doing something positive. But I quickly realized that there was a lot of things that needed to be done, and somebody needed to speak up. And I think more of us need to recognize that we should speak up if we're not happy with what we see in our own environment, our own little world, if you want
Mm.
to take that approach, because you can make a difference. I realized quickly that the firms, the HR people dealing with diversity at the time, they were looking for help. They just didn't know how to do it. And out of that came their support to reestablish the center. And I think we've done a lot since we started, back in 2004. But it's a matter of individuals stepping up and saying, I can make a difference. I'm going to hold you accountable. You told me you're going to do A, B, and C in 3 years. I'm not going to let you forget.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wait for 3 years to check on it. Every time I see you, I'm going to check on it. What have you done recently? What have you done for me? Take
Mm.
that. What have you done? Are you
Mm.
making a difference? Are you following the plan you set? Did you change it because things change? That's the way I would answer that question.
I love it. I love it. And I'll extend to the panel to even take a step further. Next question related to it was, what is NABA position to make sure that it is a movement and take action like Frank outlined? Any other reaction thoughts from the rest of the panelists?
Gwen looked like she was
NABA
going to move.
certainly has to have a voice. Excuse me, Zion.
Go ahead. I was just, you look like you were about to move.
Me too. I saw her face too. Yeah.
I was just going to say NABA certainly has to have a voice on the topic, and national office has been publishing position papers in terms of NABA's perspective. I think we need to do more of that. And also our NABA members who are in leadership roles. As you mentioned, we have managing partners at the big firms. We have CFOs at major corporations. Certainly we have our diversity officers at many corporations. And so we really have to keep the topic at the forefront and take a position and not let the dialogue drop and hold them accountable. What are you going to do? Not just what are you going to say?
Mm. Mm. That's powerful, especially look to my space in diversity that comes up, and people always asking me, what can I do, the allyship? And I say, look at from the seat that you sit, what impact can you make from your seat? So what helped me humble that day on May 25th and to reground myself, I said, hey, I'm the national treasurer for NABA. I can affect change from NABA. I'm also the diversity program leader within Amazon. I can affect change from the seat here. I also sit on advisory boards outside in Seattle that support the community middle school children. I can affect change with the middle school kids there. And we all have to self-assess what impact from the roles you play in life and in your work that you can infect change. So that's my biggest advice. And Gwen, thank you for highlighting that. Well, I'm gonna keep going if we still got more time. Keep me honest on here. I'll ask some more questions in the QA chat unless someone tells me to stop. Another question in the chat was, within a firm, how do you create inclusion and acceptance from the managers and leaders of the firm, especially from different departments that I do not directly work with? And now I would like to pause and define inclusion, at least how I define inclusion and what we do within Amazon, is inclusion is being valued, trusted, connected, and informed so that we can deliver the best results for your customer, clients, and so forth. So I want to make sure we define inclusion, because any part of value, trusted, connected, and informed is not there, you don't have inclusion. So with that, what's y'all perspectives on that?
I'll start that one, especially when I think the question was asking, especially from different departments that you don't work with directly.
Yes.
And I think the best way to be able to do that, right? It's kind of hard sometimes in the large public accounting firms to interact with some of the other divisions unless you're on a project or a client together. And maybe you are, and maybe you aren't. If you aren't on a project together, but you want to get to know someone, I always look to participate. I always look to develop relationships with people outside of just the client work. So a lot of times the firms always have programs that are going on, or committees that are being pulled together, or raise your hand for an opportunity when a partner's looking to pull people in to become a brainstorming session or a group to respond to an issue in the office. That's oftentimes a great way to start those relationships and develop them before you actually start working with an individual. And if you're actually working with an individual, the one way I've been able to build that sweat equity or equity and trust with that individual is to take on something that no one else has been willing to take on. And that's always worked for me. And it's not necessarily always fun, but when you step up and you're that angel for that person who's looking for someone to take on a role or a responsibility or a task that nobody else is jumping at, you gain equity immediately when you raise your hand and you say, I'm willing to, right? And then, learning to open up and ask questions for the things that you don't know much about or need guidance for, but developing that trust and that relationship as you work through that project and task, I think is a great way to start building that sense of trust. It sounds like you've got to make that movement first, oftentimes. But I think you'll find that when you do that, people will think about you first the next time, and they'll refer you to someone else, one of their other colleagues, the next time. And so if people aren't thinking about you immediately, and you're not the first person that they go to, I think taking on opportunities like that opens up several doors in the future that'll allow you for the opportunities that your peers may not have.
Totally agree.
Those relationships.
Totally. I love that. I'm gonna be respectful of y'all schedules, and I'll make sure the program. I want to ask one question, last question. One again, I'm honored, appreciative of the chat we had. I wish we could have an extra hour to talk further. Just the brilliant minds, you guys, and sharing perspective. So I want to close on this last question, and we'll keep it really quick in case I don't get in trouble. How have mentors or sponsors played a role in your career? You guys are obviously mentors to so many. Everyone, each one of y'all, how have they impacted your career, and what advice would you give to professionals and students with regards to finding and utilizing mentors and sponsors?
I'm going to start that
There
off.
you go.
I have a very strong passion about mentoring, mentors and sponsors. A lot of people ask me, Frank, why were you successful? And the quick answer I can give, when I started off, I never heard the word mentor, sponsors, or anything like that. But I will tell you, as I look back on my career, especially the early stages of my career, I had a mentor at each stage, and the mentors were senior partners in the firm. And it wasn't just, okay, it just wasn't, come talk to me if you have an issue. They literally put me in situations where I used the term, I was given a chance to sink or to swim. Okay. And I was lucky I kept swimming instead of sinking. Okay. But I swam, and they kept giving me more and more opportunity. And I think I say that my success is because they gave me the opportunity to learn, to prove what I can do. And I think when I hear mentoring, I do mentoring to this day. Actually, former students will call me every single time to have a problem, and I'm there to help them, because that's how important it is. And I think we need to constantly be there to help. I may not have the right answer for you, but at least I'll be a sounding board. And to the extent that I can help you with my experience, it's going to be great. But also as a mentor, you've got to be very honest. You've got to be straightforward. And I appreciated that with people telling me, Frank, you did right. Frank, you should have done this instead of what you did. That's the type of response that I think mentors need to be given to their mentees. So, I mean, that's just a quick overview.
That's beautiful.
Importance of mentoring, and I go back to my own experience.
I appreciate that. I see Shawnee pop up, so I want to make sure I'm in trouble. So thank you. I'm saying go Raiders in support of me being in trouble. Okay, I said it for you.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you to all of our panelists, Professor Ross. Thank you, Gwen Skiller, and thank you, Zion OK. Thank you, Teresa Hammond. Thank you. And thank you to all of you that joined us on this evening. This event has been absolutely special for me personally, just being able to take in the insight from all of you at varying levels with varying backgrounds and varying experience and varying levels of contribution to NABA. The one thing that I heard that has been consistent is the idea and the thought and the commitment to the fact that we are not done. We still have more work to do. And everyone that's on this call, your commitment is clear. Your commitment level to continuing to lift as you climb has been made very apparent to everyone that has participated. So again, thank you. Now, when we opened up, we started talking about dropping some coins for these Western region scholars. And I see there's a few coins that have come in, but it's not too late. So if you have a few more coins to drop, please do. Can I have somebody from NABA SF please drop the link in the chat? Let's get these dollars rolling for these scholars. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, coming up on March 18th at 6 p.m., NABA San Francisco is holding our annual Financial Literacy Bootcamp. We are excited because this Financial Literacy Bootcamp is going to be sponsored by a brand new partner to NABA SF, Effectus Group. Welcome to the family. Crawl before you ball. This event will feature Miss Holly Reed, CPA and CNN finance team member. We are going to discuss saving and investing, using credit correctly, consequences of debt, how to manage student loan debt. And just in case you don't see it on the screen, this event is great for professionals and students. Does not matter what level you're at. Come on in. Let's work on implementing the idea and concept of crawling before we ball so we can ball for the long term. All right, next slide, please. All right, NABA SF, it is that time again. It's time for our annual scholarship gala. Over the years since our founding in 1973, we have given away awarded more than $600,000 to deserving scholars from the Bay Area. So we are preparing for our scholarship program. Applications are currently open. They are due by March 31st. There is a link at the very bottom of the flyer. Jeffrey, can I have you drop the application link in the chat for everyone? If you know of any students that are NABA members and are interested in applying, please share this with them. Eligibility requirements are listed on the flyer. Next slide. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, the Regional Student Conference is coming up August 12th through August 12th. Now this year, for the second time, we are having a virtual student conference where all 4 regions have come together. However, we know the best is in the West. So please make sure you write down the information. If you know students that are interested, drop us a line. Jeffrey, can you please drop your email address in the chat? That way folks can reach out to you. We want to make sure that our region is represented. We want to make sure that the students from our region have the opportunity to, one, develop themselves professionally as participating in this conference, and also have the opportunity to begin engaging and connecting with our sponsors and our partners for opportunities for internships and full-time positions. I can tell you, when we had our last conference in person, 75% of the students that attended from San Francisco came back with an offer. Okay, so this conference is powerful. We want all of those that are eligible and available to participate. Next slide, please. All right, it's about that time. We're gonna get ready to go into the after party. The after party will officially be open in about 5 minutes. Miss Portia, if you're with us, can you please drop the link for the after party? Now, there were several of you that submitted questions and your questions didn't get answered. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull those questions in to the after party, and hopefully if some of our panelists still have a little energy, a little mojo, they can join us and we can continue the discussion in a very relaxed and chill manner. And we can all see each other in the after party. So please come on by and make sure that link is dropped in the chat. All right. And last but not least, again, thank you to NABA Austin, NABA DFW, NABA Houston, and NABA LA. Thank you to all of you. If you joined, you're either already part of the NABA family or you're teetering on the edge and you're not sure whether or not you're ready to jump in. I think you're ready to jump in. So if you're looking or interested in membership, please make sure you visit our website, the national site, www.nabainc.org. You can sign up for membership as a professional or a student, and you can then select the chapter of your desire. Our arms and our doors are always open. So come on in and join the NABA family. Here in San Francisco, we like to say that we focus on advancing careers, building relationships, creating opportunities, and developing people. So we welcome you to join us as we continue to fight for the advancement of Black professionals. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you in the after party. Peace.
Thanks, Jesse. That was awesome.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you so much. You guys all leaned in. It was perfect.
That was
It was
really fun.
it was really fun. We could totally did an hour.
Oh,
Zion
yeah.
was getting warmed up. Like, come on, what do you mean?
I know I had to like look over to the side. I was like, oh my gosh. It's
Me
already
too. I saw it too. I was like, no. So yeah, it was good.
Party because it's 10:33.
Yeah, it's late.
Oh, it's late for you.
Oh, come on, Frank. You can come to the after party.
Frank, you can hang for a little bit. I've seen you, Frank. You can hang a little bit. I've seen you hang. and you would say it every time. Oh, I'm not sure yet. And then you'd be there.
You guys have fun.
Man.
I think this is great. It's a shame we couldn't have had more time. But
I agree. We got to do it again. Shawnee, this is awesome. We got to do it again. Got to do it again.
Thank you all. I am so appreciative at just the opportunity to share the love and the passion that each of you have for NABA.